6 Traits for the Perfect Tenant. House owner's most vital choice that will decide the success or failure of his rental is the individual he put on the property. A bad tenant can conceivably cause years of stress, head pain, and money-related loss, while an incredible one can give years of security, peace, and success. Thus, don't underestimate the significance of renting to just the best inhabitants. While it's impractical to know with 100% sureness what sort of inhabitant his candidate will be, here are 6 indications and characteristics that will give him a beautiful darn great sign that this individual is extraordinary tenant material. 1. The capacity to pay. The as a matter of first importance nature of a decent tenant is his or her level of money-related duty and capacity to bear the cost of the rent. Without appropriate installment, the landowner might be compelled to remove the tenant and face possibly a great many dollars of lawful charges, lost rent, and harms. Most landowners require that a tenant's income break even with no less than 3 times the month-to-month rent. A huge number tenants that they can manage the cost of more than they truly can, so it is the landowner's business to set the standards to secure his or her investment. On the off chance that the tenant is now financially dependable, pay that adds up to 3 times the month-to-month rent ought to be adequate. 2. The eagerness to pay on time. While a few landowners take a gander at late rent as an advantage in view of the additional income from the late fee, a late-paying tenant will probably quit paying by and large. The anxiety created when the rent doesn't come in is not a wonderful affair and can be stayed away from by renting just to inhabitants with a strong history of paying on time. 3. A positive long-haul outlook for job security. While a tenant might have the capacity to pay the rent and pay it on time at the present time, his or her capacity to do as such later on is frequently controlled by the employment situation. In the event that this individual is the sort of switching employments regularly or has had long stretches of unemployment, the landlord may discover long stretches of missed rent. 4. Cleanliness and housekeeping skills. No tenant stays permanently, and upon flight needs to leave the property in great condition. Accordingly, it is imperative that the tenant's everyday way of life be spotless and systematic. This implies taking great care of the property. 5. An aversion for crime, drugs, and other illegal activities. A man who has no respect for the law will likewise likely have no respect for landlord policies. Tenants who take part in illicit activities will cause owner only anxiety and cost. In this way, make sure to run background verification on his imminent tenant to guarantee he or she doesn't have a shady past. All things considered, remember that a planned tenant's previous history of medication or liquor abuse could be viewed as a medical problem, and consequently something owner can't dismiss him or her over without being liable for violating fair housing laws. On the off chance that this individual is selling drugs, that is unique in relation to utilizing. Make certain to think about upon the reasonable housing laws in his area. 6. The stress quotient. What amount of stress will this individual cause owner? The last nature of an extraordinary tenant is something they call the stress quotient or, at the end of the day, the measure of stress a tenant will cause the landowner. Somewhere in the range of tenants are high upkeep and always request time and consideration. Others essentially disregard the terms of their rent and need steady looking after children, and train. This kind of tenant may be a headache for the owner. Clearly, no tenant will be 100% idealized, so choosing what amount close flawlessness owner requires an individual decision that to a great extent relies upon his desired inclusion and the group in which his property is found. In the event that tenants are hard to discover, it might be financially beneficial for the owner to rent to a not as much as an ideal tenant with a specific end goal to fill a vacancy. Notice the utilization here of not as much as a perfect tenant. and not anybody. Then again, on the off chance that owner has a lot of candidates to browse, he can be fundamentally more critical. Simply recollect, it's vastly improved to have his unit empty somewhat more while he sits tight for the correct tenant than to rent to the wrong person. All in all, how precisely do owner remove the awful tenants and locate those quality tenants? The appropriate response includes setting strict qualifying models and screening candidates to confirm regardless of whether they meet those norms. For free samples of probates, inherited, foreclosures, absentees a landlord, vacant, code violations, evictions list visit www.relsupermarket.com.